Hey, everybody, welcome back to Mosaic Life, where we have lots of answers, but we bury them inside and don't share them with anyone. And that's it.
That's your intro.
That's my intro.
I love it. I'm not mad about it. I like the bury your answers inside.
Welcome back to Mosaic Life, where we love shards and pieces of ourselves.
So, Kasey, this is actually our what is this? This is our
105th episode.
No, it's not.
Sam said he was going to sing on the 105th episode.
Oh yeah, I did. And this is not it.
This episode is out, Sam is going to sing us a song.
No, definitely not. But we haven't really called our we call them Mosers or shards.
Yeah.
Our community, you guys.
Yeah.
And so we don't have an official name. We're still just kind of playing off of that. So if you want to address the Mosers or the Shards or whatever you want to call them, you can actually name them anything you want. And just kind of give a little context to who you are, because we are joined with by association or straight up, you are also my brother-in-law.
By marriage.
But would I include that? I feel like I'm excluding him if I say it that way.
I think you...
I want to be included.
Yeah, he's my brother-in-law as well. So.
We'll just call him Law. This is Law and Law 2.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The Mosaic, or no, I'm sorry, never mind.
Moser Law.
Moser
Law. Moses. For today, this is a really special treat because probably 3 weeks ago, somewhere in there, Kasey and I were talking about the podcast, and I was like, dude, we need to get you on the podcast, and we're not going to plan anything because I don't like planning at all. And Sam definitely hates planning. And so I was like, all the context I gave you was you just want to come on the show, and then I wanted to just talk about your life. So I need you to sum up your entire life during this entire episode. But anyway.
Okay. Pre-Jesus, Jesus.
Yeah.
Anywhere you want to go, honestly. Wherever you want to go.
Yeah. Wherever you want to go.
Oh, I was summing it up. Pre-Jesus.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you all so much for joining us this week. We're going to say goodbye. No, I have a direction I kind of want to go, but if you want to go with anything, then that's fine.
I want to let you can completely take control and just
because
go down your plans.
All right. So my plans. Yes. Thank you for giving me.
Let me say this real quick. Because
no, my plan.
Well, this is going to really lead in for you because
all right, I'm ready.
You know a lot of my life stories.
Yes.
And they can go
yes.
everywhere.
Uh-huh.
So
I know none of your life stories. Oh, so I'm excited just to be here.
We're going to have to do, so the plan is this. Y'all ready for a plan? All right, plan is a couple of pre-Jesus stories and then a couple of where God's taking you. Because what I would like to arrive to today is to encourage our listeners on some of your story of post-Jesus, of how he actually took you from, you had no grid for like the college route, you stepped into, trusting God for that entire season, where you're at now, having a legacy with the children and stuff you have now, and stuff like my sister, Jessica. That has stuff. Jessica, I love you. No, how God brought you from where you were thinking, oh my gosh, I really don't have a plan or anything like that, and then bringing you to where you are now. So share a couple of stories. Kasey literally has the funniest stories about, he was a hellion way back. Is that still a word, hellion?
Sure.
Okay. I didn't know if that was what's the Gen Z?
Oh,
like a heathen?
Heathen? No, I'm trying to think of a nowadays word. Hellion sounds like it's 1950s. He was a...
give me the definition, I'll give you the word.
I don't know. Rapscallion.
I don't know that one either.
He was pre-Jesus. He had I don't know. Tell us about it. I don't know why I'm talking. You're the guy on the show. So tell us.
Yep. Well, so for me, I don't know. It's a weird timeline because, I really found, I would say I really found Jesus around 15 or 16 years old. And so before that, I was definitely not a great kid. Or, at that time I would definitely consider myself still a kid. Grew up here. I've born and raised here in Palestine, lived here my entire life. And so, blessing and a curse, I guess you could say. But, it was good. I had a lot of friends growing up, lived in a neighborhood with a lot of kids, apartment complexes and things like that. So I always had a lot of people that I grew up around, a lot of outside influences for sure. grew up a lot with my mom. My dad was working a lot. He would work from the time the sun came up to the sun went down to provide for our family. And so I was really appreciative of that. But with that, with the lack of a father figure, you get into a lot of trouble. And so that's what I did. And I got into a lot of trouble. But it's really funny because, obviously anything that you go through in life really shapes who you are. And so there's a lot of people that I can relate to through those troubles, which is really nice. And also, God had his hand on me from even a really young age, because there's a lot of things that I did that I remember and don't remember that could have landed me in a lot of trouble. Could have been, dead, killed several times from a lot of situations that I was put in from people that I trusted and shouldn't have trusted, because whenever you're young and naive, you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's where, for me specifically, I'm really excited for my kids, because I can, there's really not going to be anything that they're going to go through that I haven't already been through. And so it's going to be really easy for me to relate to their issues and their problems. And then obviously, growing up a little bit and found Jesus around 15, 16 years old and started dating Jessica.
Yeah.
And we've been together for 34 years, 35 years.
Yeah.
Been together forever.
It's a long time.
Yeah, we've been married for 10 years. And we've got 2 beautiful boys. Cooper, he's a little over 3.5, and Walker just turned 1. So, yeah, really exciting.
Yeah.
What was it like? So, because you talked about losing trust with people that you had trust before, navigating that, where it's like, okay, I thought you were a safe space, and now you're not. What was it like for you when you realized, like, okay, like, did you start, I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, did you start putting up boundaries, or did it take a little bit before you started to be like, oh, I gotta limit some things here?
Yeah. So it's really funny because I didn't know what that really meant because that's just the way that I grew up. Right. And so talking about safe spaces, I thought everyone around me was a safe space when it was really the opposite. And, and so I remember specifically there's 2 or 3 times that really, hit my memory, but the one time, they always say, well, mothers always know. Yeah. And, I remember one time, this is just kind of a silly example, but I was at my best friend Chris's house and, had someone buy cigarettes. We thought we were really cool, 15 years old, smoking cigarettes. And I had them in my my front right pocket because I'm an idiot, right? Yeah. Who's not going to, pick out what a cigarette box looks like? Anyways. And I remember she picked me up and she asked for something. She was playing mind games with me, I'm convinced, because she said, hey, do you have something, in your right pocket? Well, I had to pull that out first because it was on top. Pulled it out, and I was digging through my pockets. I had it in my hand. I put it on my lap, and next thing I know, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, what have I done?" I was so scared. But she actually didn't say anything to me until the next day, and she had she sat me down and she talked through a lot of things. I hate to. This is where I don't really know how to talk about it because. I don't want to say bad things about my parents. Right. Because they're not bad parents. Right. But because, whenever my mom had me, she was 18. Yeah. And we grew up together. Yeah. And so I think that was also really tough. Growing up together it's a real thing. Yeah. And, I can only imagine if I had kids at 18, it would have been... the kids would have been a blessing, but oh my God, it would have been a mess. Oh man, it would have been a mess.
Well, I understand the dynamic that you're coming across, and it's like 2 things can be true. Like, they are great parents and there's a little bit of issues here. Yeah. And it's like, but it's the context of we're all learning and growing together, and like there's grace for that. There's grace to like your kids, like you've never had kids before, so like you're stepping into new territory that you've never been in, and sometimes you take a step and it's like, oh wow, yeah, don't step there because it's not safe.
Yeah,
like, and that's not a downfall on you in the same way that like there could have been some friction and stuff that you felt with your parents, and it doesn't reflect that there's a downfall on them. Like, we definitely don't want to, we're not here to bash anyone. We're not here to paint anyone in a bad light.
Yeah.
And we can still also talk about the hardship of things, you know?
Yeah. I just don't know. And I think my mom would actually, both of my parents would tell you that there were a lot of things that, you know, growing up, there were a lot of ways that, you know, a lot of things they could have handled differently. Healthy ways of handling things wasn't their strong suit. And love you, Mom. But, you know, my mom struggles with a lot of things, and and so do I. And I actually struggle with a lot of things that she struggles with. I'm getting better through Jesus, obviously, but, you know, quick to anger. And that's always been one of my biggest downfalls is, you know, and I don't know how to explain it, but like if I don't get mad very often, but whenever I do get mad, I get really mad. And so I'm working on that. I'm trying to get better at that for sure. But, you know, I would say that is one of the things that I'm trying to correct with my parenting is be a lot more graceful.
Yeah.
But also instill discipline to where they know that, hey, I'm dad and, you know, what I say goes. But, you know, there's a reason why we're telling you to do these things.
Yeah.
It's not because we're mean, and it's not because we don't like you. It's because it's what's best for you, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, you relate that to our relationship with God right there, and it's like, you know, why are we going through some of the things that we're going through?
Yeah.
Right? And, yeah, I think about you, Sam, on that because, you know, what we've talked about or what y'all have talked about on the podcast. You know, I think about that. So it's anyways, go ahead. No.
Damn.
No, you please. No, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting because you said one of your faults that you see in yourself is that you're like quick to anger, but like, I don't think about that about you at all. Like, I think you're one of the most forgiving people. Like you're one of the people that in my mind is like the quickest to forgive. So like if I screw up or I offend you or do anything like that, then you're like, oh, I forgive you. And it's like something that just comes natural to you. So I think it's interesting. The perspective there is that you were looking at something as a fault and I was looking at it as like, I don't see that about Kasey at all. So,
well, it's, and I think because, you know, I don't know if it's because I've offended and I've also been offended so much that, you know, you look at people's heart and I think like, obviously we're just traveling on this journey that we call life and you start off at a certain age and then you start to, you know, get offended by things. You start offending people. Yeah. And I think the key is communication. I'm sorry, I keep clearing my throat, but I think the key is communication and you're one of the people that actually taught me great communication. So
I want to hear this story. Like, how did Daniel teach you communication?
I got the belt. I said, "Listen here, boy."
It was the sandal. It was the sandal.
Oh, it was my flippy floppy.
It actually had to do with marriage counseling. So that was one of the biggest. I mean, just you can take any lesson from anything. So you know. Jessica and I have had our struggles in marriage, and anybody that hasn't lying to you, right? And so, but
my marriage is perfect.
Yeah,
right, well, Ruth.
That's why we came to you, Daniel. Well, we really came to Ruth.
Yeah. Oh, is that what it is?
And I know when didn't show up today.
This episode airs, I'm going to be sitting next to her, and she's going to punch me at this very moment right there. So anyway, no, you're absolutely correct. Nobody has it all fit together in their marriage. So.
But anyways, I try to take that, you know, characteristic into my life because, obviously communication. So like if you hurt someone's feelings or, which I tend to do to my wife a lot. Love you, Jessica.
Keep giving shout outs to everybody. Oh yeah, Dad, I love you too.
Yeah. Love you, Dad. But yeah, I mean, if you listen to, you know, hear other people's perspective on things and okay, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. It starts off as, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. It is what it is, and then it's like, well, everyone else has valid feelings too. It's not just your feelings. And so once you start to realize that other people actually have feelings and it's not just all about you, and you start listening to what people have to say with what you said, how they responded, you start to realize that the world is not as what you thought it was. And so, and I don't know if it was before that. Like, I don't know exactly what you're talking about as far as, feeling that I've always been really graceful, because I feel like I haven't, but maybe that was just a facade that I put on. I'm pretty good at that.
See, now I don't know what to think
I'm
about
curious. I'm curious about this, where I think that we keep score more than anyone else in our lives, of like our own faults.
Yeah.
And so it's like we have a hard time looking past any downfall that we've done. And we also have a hard time not seeing the good that we've done. And so like Daniel could have the perspective of, oh, dude, I've seen you forgive. But you're just in those moments also thinking like, oh, but I didn't forgive this. And I'm actually like still hurt by this. And you're counting it against your own character when that's not true. Like, that's not who you are. Like, you're not the downfalls. You're not the missteps. It's the ones that you get right. Those are who you are. Yeah. And we have a hard time receiving that. I know I have a hard time receiving that. It's like, no, but I've disqualified myself. I've messed up too much to even consider myself a good person and things like that. And it's like, but someone else's perspective of who you are is completely different.
Yeah.
And I think that it's because we just don't know how to forgive ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's something that I struggle with a lot, is being able to just forgive myself.
Yeah.
And when you're going through life, it's a lot of, I'm starting to use this mindset more, which is every day is a new day.
Yeah.
Like, every day we get a clean slate, and I have opportunities to be the person I want to be, and not reflect on the person I was. Mm-hmm. And that's just like kind of how I'm walking through things today in it. So is there, like, I guess I want to ask you, like, what are your favorite things about yourself? That's what I want to ask you.
Okay, Sam. I don't know, man.
It's a hard one. I asked Sam this 2 episodes ago. It took him off guard.
Yeah.
I think
you asked me because I was explaining to you that I asked this question to everyone else, and then you flipped it on me. I was like, "Oh, that's what it feels like." I don't like it.
Yeah, that's how it feels.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's a soul searching one. It's like, okay, what do I like about me? Because we're so quick to say like what we don't like about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
We're so quick to say like, oh yeah, no, and like jokingly throw out one of our defects.
Yeah.
But I want to know what you like about yourself.
That's a hard question, man. If you ask me what I don't like about myself, I can answer that pretty easy.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think that that's kind of an issue, obviously. But I don't know. I don't really like specifically talking about myself. That's always why I've always been really bad in job interviews.
Really?
Tell us about yourself. I suck as a person. You shouldn't hire me right now at all.
I've always been really bad in job interviews. So I don't know. I mean, I can tell you what other people have told about me.
That's fine.
Okay. I've been told that I'm funny.
You are funny.
No, he's not. Yeah, he's pretty funny.
I see you after the show, Danny.
Please forgive me. That's another one.
I've been told that I'm a good dad.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told that I'm a good husband.
Yes.
By my wife. I think that's all that counts.
Yeah.
I've been told that I'm a really good son
by
my parents. I don't know. Maybe that's
really great brother.
I've recently been told that I'm
just in the last few seconds.
Yeah. Breaking news. I've been told that I'm a really good brother. So.
In law.
In law, yeah. We live by the law. We live and die by the law.
That's right.
Can I ask you what your favorite things are about Kasey? Because I'm very curious now.
Yeah. My favorite thing about Kasey is that, like I told you, you're so quick to forgive. You're quick to look for the best in people, and which is ironic because you weren't able to find the best in yourself when we just like popped the question, but you're like, yeah, I can find 50 things wrong with myself. But
Yeah.
you're you're so quick that you're like the optimistic guy. So if I said something negative about myself, you'd be like, yeah, Daniel, I don't think so. This is what I'm seeing, A, B, C, D. And you like come up with all these things. So like you're a super encourager is number one. Number two, you always are quick to forgive and quick to find the positive in whatever situation. And I mean, those are my tops for you.
Well, I'll count that as a victory because because honestly, I mean, that's what I strive to do. Honestly, I mean, you hit the nail on the head because going back now we can kind of open into it. But you know, as a kid, I don't feel like I ever had any potential to do anything. You know, like I don't know how to word this without it sounding bad. But my dreams and aspirations were not very high for myself for what I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
You know, growing up, I had a glass ceiling on myself, and I thought, okay, you know, once I get to X place and make X dollars, then I'm successful.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought of myself. And it's really funny because, you know, I can remember specific conversations growing up with my parents. I hated school, by the way. Hated school.
Yeah.
Hated it, man. And I think the reason is because I thought that I was stupid. And I mean, people say that, but I really, literally thought that I was stupid.
Wow.
And it was, there's a lot of reasons why. I can make a lot of excuses. But there was not a lot of discipline there. Again, I'm not saying anything bad about my parents, but, you know, I cared about, I think I just burped into the mic. Sorry about that. Dr. Pepper for the win.
You're good. We're a raw show, so like anything happens.
Anything goes on there.
Man, Dr. Pepper, if you want to sponsor me.
If you want to spit, just spit right now. Do anything you want to.
But really, growing up, I didn't have a lot of self confidence, and I would say that has translated as an adult as well. But you know, there were some things there growing up. So this is interesting, and so as I've gotten into the insurance world, the people that I started with in the insurance world, a lot of them are teachers.
Yeah.
You know, for whatever reason, teachers and coaches make really, really, really great insurance agents, by the way. So if you're interested in insurance and you're a teacher or a coach, get into it because you're really good.
Yeah.
But, you know, obviously as a teacher, you study your field, you know, and you try to grow and get better. At least I hope you do. And a lot of the teachers that I come up with in the insurance world, you know, we just, for trainings and, you know, getting together and, you know, you hear these stories. And since then, you know, a lot of them have had kids, and, you know, we've talked about, hey, when are you going to put your kids in school? Like just conversations like that. And there have been statistics that show that so I was born in July, and so I could either start school a year early or a year late, technically. I started a year early, and they say that's the worst thing that you can do because you're always behind. And so I was always, you know, I graduated high school at 17, and I graduated with a lot of people that were 19, you know, 18, 19 years old. Yeah. And those kids were obviously, you know, whenever you're within that time span of life, 1 year makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like up until the age of like 20, 21, something like that for guys, every year is like a huge milestone. Because you can put like a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old next to each other, and it's like
world of difference.
World of difference.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of had a part in it, but then also like just not really caring about school as well, coupled with not having the confidence of, you know, I thought that I was an idiot again. You know, it's like you couple all those things together. And I remember trying, I would always, it always started this way. New school year, new clothes, new backpack, new shoes. Going to show up to class first day. You know, I'm going to have my new notepad, my new pen, pencil, and I'm going to give it everything that I have. And first day is always easy, right? You go over the syllabus, and I'm like halfway through the syllabus. I'm like, oh, I'm already lost. You know, they're like, just walk in the door. I'm like, how do you do that? How do you walk?
I'm lost.
I tripped on the way in. You know,
I'm in the doorway.
but yeah, I mean, like before the first 6 weeks, before that first report card comes out, you can forget about it. Like I'm already, you know, all C's. If I'm making all C's, I'm pumped. I'm excited. And so, that was kind of the standard that I put on myself. And I think that is also important, you know, because like parents and things like that.
Yeah.
You can motivate kids, but if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. Yeah. At least for me, that's how I was. And everybody tells me I'm stubborn. So, yeah. But anyways, long story short, just that whole thing of like, you know, just barely scraping by, barely, graduating high school, you know, like kind of kicking me across the stage so they didn't have to see me again. You know, shout out to all my high school teachers. But you know, it's funny because literally, you know, in 5th grade, I can remember all of my teachers in third grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. I can remember them because none of them liked me for good reasons. Really sad. I was just not a great kid, you know, and in 4th grade, there's one teacher, her name was Miss Blackwell, specifically. And she was my English, I don't know what you would call it then. It wasn't English, it was like...
literature.
Maybe, literature or something like that. And, you know, kids would start to... And I don't know what my reading level was. It wasn't probably very high at the time. But, you know... they would start reading a story and, you know, through the first paragraph, I'd be fine. And then after that, like I would be lost. And, you know, like my brain would still be stuck on the previous sentence and they'd be 6 sentences down, you know, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm scrambling, trying to catch up. And then next thing you know, like the story doesn't make sense. And so here I am, I'm putting my head on my backpack, you know, taking a nap because it's like, well, I'm not going to catch up anyways. Yeah. Then I get in trouble for putting my head on the backpack. And it's like, oh. You know, anyways, but, and so those kind of situations really even further took me away from school because now whenever I show up to school, it's like, I hate this place because
you're prepared for failure.
I'm prepared for failure. Absolutely. And
that's part of, one of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of like the school systems. And it's like, because I relate very, very much to your story. I was a slower reader, and so like I would get behind, and you feel like this competition of like, oh, now they're ahead of me, and that's not the case. It's not like a competition thing. So I always hated that they made you like read out loud and as a class like together. I just preferred when they were like, okay, do your reading and sit there quietly. But it was like, I had a hard time with the structure of school because I don't know wasn't an acceptable answer. It was like you were laughed at if you said that. Like you were made fun of if you didn't know the answers, or you felt less than or stupid or whatever. And it's like all of life is figuring out things that we don't know. Yeah. So it doesn't prepare us for life. Like school should be preparing us for life. Like they don't teach us how to manage like bank accounts or anything like that, or anything about money. Yeah, right. It's all like history that Daniel loves.
What's wrong with history?
Just history, like John
Pick
Adams.
On me. Listen, they're coming out with another show. Oh, I already told Sam about this one. Yeah, Kirk Douglas is going to be in this one. It's about Benjamin Franklin, bro. Hey, it's about to get real. I wonder how it turns out. I don't know.
We'll talk about that after the show.
Exactly. Thank you, Kasey.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, like I just I don't know if it's like the structure, but like I very much felt the same way. It's just like I'm behind, and now I'm less than, and that's not a good thing. at all. So
That's a
Yeah.
interesting perspective because like I had a different view on school. I mean, I'm listening to what y'all
were
saying.
you good at
and
school?
I was good at school.
That's
though.
why.
See, and that was the planner in me, I guess. I don't know. No, because I'm thinking about, we went to a different school system, but I'm thinking about like my 3 kids now go to PISD. And I think it's the heart of the teachers as well, because I'm thinking on every one of their elementary teachers all the way through. Micaiah's in 6th grade right now. And I'm thinking about every one of her teachers are giving it like 100%. And my kids, with the exception of waking up early and having to go, like some things we can change in our school system. Shout out to, I'm not going to do a shout out because I was like, they're going to get mad at me. But there's some things that we can change, obviously. But I had a different perspective on school. I actually enjoyed it for the most part. And my kids right now sort of enjoy it and they're doing well. Yeah. But Will's story is actually similar to yours because, and we've talked about this, he actually started a year ahead. We were one of those parents that just hated their child. And so we put him in early and he's actually in there now. He had a little bit rougher start. Love you, Will. And you're doing great, buddy. But he has struggled and had to put a lot more time into it as opposed to my other 2 that they're older, the older kids in their class, and they're just like buzzing through. And Will's had to put 150% into that. So.
Yeah, and I've kind of told you this story, whenever Will was going through those issues, like I can relate. You know, it's not all Will, it's just the circumstance.
Yeah.
And so, but it's really funny that I can remember the teachers that were really graceful to me.
Yeah.
And I can remember the teachers that were not graceful to me.
Ooh.
And so, either way, you can either choose, and I think this is kind of what goes into how I shape my perspective. Of you can choose how you treat people.
Yeah.
And you can treat people nice and they're going to remember that.
Yeah.
Or you can treat people mean and they're going to remember that. But I always remember kind of what Sam's, exactly to a T. That's how it felt, and and so I know what it feels like to, how do I say this? I know what it feels like to feel less than, and I don't want people to feel like that. And so that's
why you're an encourager.
That's why I'm an encourager.
And quick to forgive.
Yep.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's exactly why.
Now, just because this was my story, and I'm curious if it's where you're at, is that coming from a genuine, like, I want to build people up? Or do you feel like there's also some I don't deserve to feel good in it? Where it's like, so for me, I was really polite for other people, but it was because I believed I needed to go last. Wow. It was because I felt less than you, so I'm going to give you the spotlight so that I can shy away in the shadow where I belong is how I thought.
Yeah.
Do you feel similar in that?
Yes and no. Growing up, I acted out a lot. And so I think that was kind of my way of like, hey, look at me. I'm still here,
Yeah.
But it's funny because, whenever you're a child, you only think about childlike things. You only think about, I remember thinking like this part of my life is never going to end. Yeah. And that was really tough. Whenever you're hopeless, and you're going into a hopeless situation every day, it's like, when's this ever going to end?
Yeah.
And and so anyways, sorry, I'm thinking in my head. There's a lot
you
of
can think.
Go for it.
A lot of things.
We are long-winded here, so
a lot of things running through my head right now. But whenever you go into a hopeless situation and you feel like you have no hope, that's a terrible place to be.
Yeah.
And so you think like, okay, I know what that felt like as a child, and honestly, I've known what that's felt like as an adult too.
Yeah.
And so, we're supposed to be encouragers.
Yeah.
Nowhere in the Word does it say to tear people down.
Yeah.
And so I think that God was kind of setting me up for that, even as a child. He's using my failures for kingdom work, which I think is amazing.
Yeah.
So you're going through school and you are struggling with that. This is before God, right?
Oh yeah.
And so how did that play into like your perspective of who God was in that season of like, because parents and teachers both, like authority in general, we kind of take that and paint a picture of God because of it, because we see God as an authority figure. Did that play into that? Like, did you feel like God was upset with you and mad because you're in your own head less than?
At that time? Mm-hmm. I didn't even know who God was, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, didn't even know who he was.
So you weren't even thinking
No.
anything like that?
No. Which is really weird because I don't really know how to explain it, but I kind of lived in my own world in that way because my grandpa was a gospel singer, and he knew the word really well, but he went through his struggles also, which is a whole another situation. You know, whenever you're a kid, you look at, well, for me, I looked at every adult or anyone that was older than me that was technically an adult. Everybody had their life together.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, man. And then you start to get older, and then you start learning little family secrets, and it's like, wait a minute.
Yep.
What? You know,
Wait a minute, you have struggles too? What?
yeah, exactly. And I thought I was the only one that went through struggles in the world. And yeah, so there was a little comfort in that, but also like it was disheartening too, because it was like, well, if everybody's going to go through struggles, then we're just going to struggle our way through this life.
Wow.
You know, and yeah, that was kind of a pivotal moment for me in my life, but yeah.
I was going to say, I think it's interesting because, I mean, the whole point of Mosaic is talking about taking these broken pieces and seeing how they look like when you put them back, when God puts them back together, they make this beautiful masterpiece. And everything that you were naming off there, because we kind of know the middle of the story. I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but like a broken piece would have been you feeling stupid or feeling hopeless in a situation or all these things. And God has been taking these things that you thought were failures at one point, and now I'm able to brag about you because I think like, all right, that broken piece where you felt like you were stupid, I see you as one of the smartest people I know, because I was like, and you can share on that or not share on it because it's Mosaic. You don't have to do anything I say or not. So, but like, you're one of the smartest people I know because you went and you did the stuff with the insurance. You did all the testing in the college and everything like that. You looked at yourself as never amounting to anything, or like, I'm just going to always be because of whatever teachers did or did not say to you. And then you get in the finance world and you're making these huge decisions financially. And then like the stuff, like some of the funny stories I'm thinking of that you can share or not share of, like when you're a kid and then now you're raising two godly men. I mean, I just think it's cool. It's a perfect picture of, yeah, the Mosaic and God putting this thing together, but it's an awesome picture of what grace does, of God taking grace and saying, you know what, I choose to take your faults and failures, everything that you've done and where you think you're going, and this is what I say about you. Because we're kind of talking like right now, we're like saying, well, what do you say about yourself and all this other stuff? But I want to hear like, what does God say about me?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's easy to look back on the past now, right? Because we're in the future. But, and, you know, anyways, it's kind of encouraging as well because I'm 31 years old, you know, and it's like, okay, that's what I went through in my first 31 years of life.
Yeah.
Get it, hopefully, God willing.
There's a country song about that. Sam will sing it now for us.
Sam?
I don't know the lyrics, so I'm sorry. I can't sing it.
It's like next 30 years or something. You know it.
I don't know
You
that
know
song.
you know it. Anyway,
Who sings it?
I don't know. John Legend.
Is that the guy with the Beatle? From the Beatles?
He's from the Beatles. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so that kind of shaped that portion of my life. I mean, there's a lot of situations that did, but, you know, kind of wrapping it up into a neat little bow.
Yeah.
There. But, yeah, fast forward to 2000, I don't know, let's just say 15 years of old, 15 years of age. And, well, actually, let me backtrack just a little bit because I started to touch on, you know, not knowing God. Yeah. And I didn't know who Jesus was at all. I didn't know who God was at all. I never prayed or anything like that. But my parents, again, I'm not talking about my parents, but they didn't really introduce that into my life.
Yeah.
And, whether it be from being busy or just trying to focus on paying the bills and, life gets in the way. But that's a pretty important thing to introduce into your kid's life. My mom would tell us all the time that she's praying for us, and she did. And I appreciate that. I think that did work. But, faith without works is dead too. And if you, you have to teach someone something so that they know it, so that they can pass it on to other people. If you're not the one that's teaching someone, then somebody's teaching your kids something.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of teaching going on, but it wasn't kingdom minded. It was the opposite. And so, I had a lot of teaching. It just wasn't good teaching. And the kids that I, spent time with taught me how to do things that I shouldn't be doing, smoking weed, smoking cigarettes, hanging out with girls, anything that you can think of that a teenage has issues with.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing.
Wow.
And so that was my God. That's where I found my peace, was in my friendships and, just the people-pleasing side of me. Whatever they wanted to do, I wanted to be included, right? Because I didn't feel good enough. And so it was like, hey, man, anybody that lets me hang out with them, I want to do anything to keep them happy.
Wow.
And so that's kind of where my mind was. And that's how I got to a lot of the trouble that I got into.
Yeah.
But, looking back, I say that God had his covering on me 150,000 trillion %, because there's so many times that I should be dead, honestly. There's a lot of cars that I've gotten into that I don't know how we didn't wreck, because that same car with the same driver under the same circumstances that happened the next week, nothing changed except for I wasn't in the car.
Wow.
Completely total. There was one example where I won't say who it was, but it's a family member of mine that
his name rhymes with
yeah. But he's had his own issues, but he again trying to be accepted and fit in, right? I think I was about 16 years old at this point, whenever, maybe 15. It was kind of right at the apex of, I'm in my worst stage, but I'm also, God's fixing to really make a move in my life. And we were drinking and driving and, just trying to fit in, right? And it was me and this person. And we did this pretty often. Every weekend we'd, get drunk and we'd go driving around because we thought it was cool.
Yeah.
And we never got into accidents. And whenever I tell you that's by the grace of God, it's by the grace of God. Because I'm talking like, this guy was an idiot, man. Turn out the headlights, drive down country roads, like driving 70 miles an hour, going around curves, and just crazy stuff.
Wow.
And I'm not exaggerating. It was like, it's scary to think about. And never got into any accidents ever. Never even went off the road. And then there was one time where I said no. I'm not, and I don't know why I did, but I said no. And he got into a wreck. And where I would have been sitting, I would have been dead.
Wow.
In that wreck. And that was kind of one of those moments where it was like, I feel like the decision was made for me. Because I was getting old enough to be like, maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe you shouldn't get in that car anymore.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the turning moments for me in my life, for sure.
Wow. And soon after you found God, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, kind of. So I remember Darren Goodson, who was the worship leader at ET.
Yeah.
He's a distant relative of mine, and he invited my family to church at Evangelistic Temple in Balsine. And we went, I don't know why, because, you know, we went to church on Easter and Christmas, and there was a period of time in my life where we went to a Baptist church up the road for like 6 months, kind of. We became members. I was baptized. I think it was like around the age of 12, but it was one of those deals where I was baptized because I felt like everyone else was getting baptized.
Yeah.
So it was like, I got to fit in here. You know, again, here I am fitting in, right? I'm good at that.
Right.
And so, anyways, but that's a whole nother story. So there was a spurt like 6 months where I went to church and I went to a church camp, which was so awkward, bro, because,
Please talk about the awkwardness of church
oh
camp.
man, it was so awkward. I'd never been around kids. Like all the kids that I hung out with were not kids who you would want your kids hanging around.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know if that sounds bad or not, but it's just the truth. Yeah. And you're like, hey, those kids are going to teach my kids things that I don't want them to know yet. Yeah. And that's who I was hanging around with.
Wow.
And I remember, I think I asked my mom and my dad if I could go to church camp for whatever reason, because it was like, hey, it's summer, I was bored, didn't have anything to do. And so I did, and it was the worst, man. It was the worst because, okay, it was me and 2 other kids that, like, I stuck out like a sore thumb. You know, it's like I would try to bring up conversations to talk about, and they'd be like, I was the kid that their parents were trying to keep, you know, they were trying to shelter their kids away from kids like me. Yeah. And I remember I went, and it was like so awkward because, you know, worship, what is that? You know, I don't know any of these songs. And it was songs like Father Abraham and Pharaoh, you know, it's like every kid knows, like every, you know, Sunday school kid knows these, but I didn't know. And like everyone around me singing and excited and jumping up and down and, you know, just praising God. And I'm like, man, this is weird, you know? And so I would just sit in my chair, you know, and then it was like, hey, you need to get up while everybody's praising. You need to stand up. And it's like, and so that right there kind of
pushed
shaped
you off.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of shaped my opinion of the church.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother story. But
I don't know. I think like there's a good little vein here that we can hit where it's the pressure that a church can put on just someone who's coming in to check it out. Yeah. And it's like, oh, you have to enter in. You have to behave the way that we behave. Almost like, dude, like how old were you? 12?
Yeah, I was probably like 12, probably.
12 years old?
Yeah.
And it's like, just let the kid be a kid. He's figuring it out. Like proximity is a huge thing that can influence us. And it's like, if you, cause you're hitting on points, and I see it like in correlation to your story, you're hitting a lot of veins where it felt like school to you, where it's like, oh, now I'm left out because I don't know these songs. Oh yeah. Like I don't know the behavior that I'm supposed to have here. And once again, now I'm not in. Yeah. I'm out. Yeah. And it's like very uncomfortable for you. And it's like, how many times are we doing that with just youth activities? Like how many times are we doing that in normal church services? Like the pressure to put on someone to be like, hey, no, behave like us. I don't think that that's helping anyone.
Yeah. And there's a real big difference. I mean, I think people should know that there's a really big difference in including children and forcing children. Yeah. Right. And so whenever I'm told you need to stand up, it's like, why? I'm happy sitting down. Right. You know, so why do I have to stand up? You know? Yeah. And so, but you know, inclusion is different. Right. And so that's important to put up, to point out there. But anyways, so that kind of shaped that to where, you know, we went to church there for a little while. We actually have a portrait that is hanging up in my parents' house that is, they love it. They love it. I hate it. They love it.
Wow, what's the portrait? All of y'all at the church or what?
Well, it's like church picture day, and I'm wearing like a shirt tucked in with my hair literally like brush combed to the side, and I look at that picture and I'm like, that's not who I was.
Ooh.
That's not me. But my parents, they love it, you know? Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously I don't tell them to take it down or anything, but, and I don't mean it's a bad picture, but it's just not, it's not how I felt at the time.
I was going to say, it's the authenticity of it.
Yeah.
Is that what the issue is?
I think
it's
so.
like, that's not who I was. And, and I don't want to portray that I was that, knowing.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's.
Yeah. And also, you know, at a surface level, that's the deeper meaning of it. But at a surface level, you know, it's like at 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever, you know, that's not what I would have worn to fit in. You know, the crowd that I was fitting in, that is not the clothes. That's not what you would wear to fit in with the crowd that I was with. And so I think that kind of plays a little bit of a part into it. But I also think that it's kind of a foreshadowing of who I am now, you know? And so it's like, I don't know. Life is full of lessons. I could, you know, tell you 500 million lessons that I've learned in my life just from like looking back on events. It's like God was using that to shape me. And it was one of the toughest times in my life.
Yeah.
You know, so kind of wrapping all that back to including people and, you know, like validating people and encouraging people and things like that. It's really because I didn't feel like I ever had that. And so, yeah. And, you know, the encouragement that I got, it was not good encouragement. It was like, hey, man, you know, why don't you come over this weekend and we'll smoke a little weed, or, you know, we'll go drinking and driving or whatever, you know. And I'm also really big. I'm only telling y'all this because we're on a podcast, right? And it's about Mosaic life. But I'm not real big about talking about my past in that way because I feel like I don't want to be someone to harp on my issues from the past. I think it's good to recognize them. Yeah. But I think that you become what you talk about. And I don't want to just, you know what I mean? Like, and so I try not to. 99.9% of people don't even know this stuff. Like this is, you know, talking about this kind of stuff right here is it's all brand new to everyone. And so, and I think a lot of that goes into an image issue too. It's an image problem. And because I'm ashamed of who I was.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I relate with that so much, dude. And it's like, yeah, you don't want to bring it up because I think we feel like we at least think that people are going to think differently of us if they know.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. You know, I'll say this only because I've talked to him about it before, and he doesn't know even a glimpse of everything, but I have opened up to him a little bit, and he was kind of shocked. And it's your dad, and you know, somebody that I look up to, and has really shaped me into the man that I am today, in a lot of ways. You know, teaching me ways of how I can do things that I didn't think I could do. Yeah, and it's really funny because my parents recognize that too. And I think that that's really honoring for him. Wow. And I don't think I've ever told him that. Maybe I should, or maybe he should watch the podcast.
Dad, you should watch the podcast.
But yeah, my parents are really appreciative of your dad. My dad too. But my dad is appreciative of my dad. So, and my dad is appreciative of my dad, who's appreciative of my dad. So, talking about God.
I want to, if it's okay with you, I want to go back to the past thing, because you said, yeah, it may be an image thing or something like that, or maybe it's like you're ashamed of some of the stuff that you did. I think about one of the biggest celebrations that probably took place in history, and I could be wrong, and I have nothing to back this up, so I'm just making up a statistic.
Is it whenever the Rangers won the World Series?
When the Rangers won the World Series. Now, the second thing that happened is when... No, anyway, I was going to go into Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, but no.
That's a soft spot.
Yeah, anyway. No, I think one of the biggest celebrations that ever took place in history, or one of the biggest, was when Paul entered into eternity after he was beheaded. Because if you think about all the thousands of people that he slaughtered pre-Jesus, and then he has this amazing encounter on the road to Damascus, and he completely, talk about repentance, he goes completely 180, and now he is, that same fire and passion that he has is directed now toward the kingdom of light. And when I'm hearing your story, all I'm hearing is like Paul. Actually, sorry, Saul. And then now it's like you are 100% for the other kingdom. And so I would say, just as an encouragement, like anytime you talk about the past, I think Paul had the same stuff that he dealt with. Is he was like, that he met family. He had to have met families that he probably murdered their cousins or maybe their parents or something like that. Yeah. And he's now teaching the love of God and grace and all this other stuff. And they're like, but we know who you were and you killed them. And he's like, yeah. But let me tell you about grace and all this other stuff. And so,
and that's really tough, by the way, whenever you're the one that's like, hey, let me preach on grace whenever you've been, and that's where image comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because what did they think about Saul? Or what did they think about Paul? They thought Paul was Saul still, but he's a completely different man. He's
completely different guy.
And that's where image comes in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest fear, is that the people that know, we're afraid like they're going to say, that's who you are.
Yeah.
Not who you were.
Yep.
That's who you are. Like, we know who you are.
Come on.
And it's not true. Like,
they're still projecting that on you.
They're projecting it on you. And like, that's what keeps me like shutting up more times than not, is like, I don't want people who know my past to show up and say like, oh, but I actually know who you are though.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I'm not that now. Like, I'm not the person I was yesterday. I'm not the person I was last week. Like, I'm continuously growing, like trying to change and trying to become better in this. But we fear the chains of our past, and like we're shackled to it, you know?
Yeah. And kind of hitting, okay, let me go back just a second. So going back to talking about David, my father-in-law, right, who I call my dad, and just like Daniel's my brother, not my brother-in-law.
I'm looking up at scripture. I'm not texting while we're on the podcast.
And like
You're
Sam
like,
is
what the heck? He's so
Sam is
rude.
also my brother.
Yes.
In-law.
Because we're included.
We're all under the law, everybody.
We're in it.
There's so much law.
Whoa, foreshadowing that, like at the beginning of this, we were talking about like including Kasey and like telling him.
I want to be included.
Like, we have context to the story. He wants to be included.
Yeah.
Oh.
Included.
Yeah,
wow. I didn't
You're
think about that.
included.
But you know, because Jessica and I have sat in the living room before, just on a real quick conversation, because I'll tell you what sparked it up is that book, Wild at Heart.
Yeah. John Eldridge.
Yes. Good book. Read it.
Fun fact, he's actually a relative of John Legend.
Yeah. Or John Lennon.
And John Lennon.
Yeah.
The three were brothers when he wrote the book.
But I was talking about a story, and there's a specific story in that book, and you'll just have to read it to get it. You'll figure it out. But we were talking about it, and I was tearing up, trying not to, cry, because I don't like whenever people see me cry. And it just kind of unfolded, and your mom was there too, my mom, and we were talking, kind of a couple stories, some funny stories. Like I have so many funny stories because I was just such a naive kid. Remind me to tell you about the shoes that pump up. You remember that story?
Yes.
That'll tell you what kind of kid
You've got to, real quick, tell the story.
All right. So, the shoes that you could pump up, there's a little air bubble on the tongue, you'd pump up. And I remember, I was kind of an entertainer as a kid too. And I remember I was sitting in class, and I walked in, and I had my new shoes on, and everybody's like looking at you. It's like, that's I took a couple extra trips to the pencil sharpener that day. I was like, I'm feeling myself, and everyone was like, man, I like your shoes, and I was like, thanks, felt good, and I was like, just wait till you see what I do at PE.
The build up.
Yeah,
I think that was around the time that Like Mike came out.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and I was like, just wait till you see what I do at PE. And the reason that sparked was because I was in the, pushing that ball as fast as I could to get as many air pumps in because it was gonna make me jump higher. Yeah. and so everyone was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, hey, "Just wait, wait till PE." And I swear to you, in my head, I thought that is if I, like a BB gun, you pump it. The more times you pump it, the stronger it gets. That's what I felt like my shoes were gonna do.
Yeah.
And I had it so convinced in my head that as I was walking to PE, I took my shoes off because I was like, I don't want to mess the prime up. I don't want to mess it up, because I'm liable to just take a step and boom through the roof. And so I took my shoes off, walked to PE. Of course, I'm getting in trouble for that. They're like, "Put your shoes on." And I was like, I got business to handle,
I'm gonna have to repump.
Yeah, and I think at that point, because I didn't put my shoes on, I think at that point it was like the teachers were like, "Oh, God, just get him out of my classroom, get him to PE." I don't want to deal with him anymore, which I totally understand, by the way. And so okay, here we are, PE class. They've got the basketballs out, and everyone's looking at me. I walk over to the free throw line, and I was like, "This is the moment." This is what I've been living for, right? Yeah. And thanks to my grandma, I think she's the one that bought me the shoes, I get to be the hero. And so I was going to be like Mike. And so I get the basketball, and I'm serious, like everyone's lined on the baseline and along the sidelines, and they're like, "Man, this is going to be great." And I get the basketball, and I start running on my tippy toes because I didn't want I didn't want the heel. I didn't want to hit, so I start running on my tippy toes, which I already probably looked like an idiot. And I, push off as hard as I can, and I go, whoop. And everyone's like, "Oh, of course!" and I'm like, "Just give me a second." And so I start pumping my shoes up again. Did the same thing. And it was like one of those moments where I look back now and I'm like, man, it's kind of funny because I really thought that I was gonna make that jump.
Yeah.
And it's like the imagination of children. It was just kind of a funny situation. So, anyways, that's that story. But going back into the living room situation with your mom and your dad.
Yeah.
And starting to tear up, cry a little bit, tell some stories. That was one of them. And, I started to tell some of my war stories. I'll call them war stories, so you will know the difference. And I said, "What did you know that about me?" "Well, of course, your mom. She's so sweet." She's like, "No, you're the most perfect person, like you've never done anything wrong." Just like she thinks about you. It's like she has altered lens. A blindness, yeah.
To any fault.
Yeah. And so this was news to her. But after I asked, I said, the reason why I don't tell these stories is because before I married Jessica and before I was able to sort of, I guess, prove myself as who I really am, if I told you these stories about myself, you would have never let me marry your daughter. Mm. And that's the truth. And he didn't say that. I said that because I just know for a fact. And anyways, long story short, I asked him, like, well, what would you have thought about me as a child? Of course, your dad, love him to death. And I agree with a lot of things that he said. "Oh, you needed a good butt whooping." And I probably did need a good butt whooping, but that didn't work on me. I actually acted out more because to me it was like, okay, so you're telling me I can get in as much trouble as I want, and I'm gonna get a butt whooping, and then we're gonna be in good shape. It's like, wow, hey, I'm gonna get into as much trouble as I need to,
Wow.
And I did, man, I did. So that's another story for another day, but you start to realize that you're not who you were, but if you let people in on certain parts of your life, they start to judge you on that. And so that's where the image problem comes into place. You know.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that your dad was judging me on an image problem. I'm just saying, like, in a real, like, quick synopsis, it's like, well, hey, that kid was a bad kid and he needed a butt whooping. You know, I probably wouldn't have let him hang out with my kids. And it's like, but that's I needed kids like you in my life.
Like me?
Yeah, I did. I needed kids like you in my life.
See, you don't know anything about me, Kasey. I had double shocks. When I would pump mine, I made that dunk. I ruled these streets. No, I think
I was talking about Sam.
Oh, he really did dunk.
Daniel needs to work on his pride. So
Yeah.
No, Sam was a professional swimmer. We are going to have to get that story on here one day.
I was on a swim team. That is a true thing.
Yes.
But
you
I
wear
was
the
not a
cap?
professional.
Did you wear the cap?
No.
Oh, man.
No.
But he had the Speedo.
No, I did not. I definitely did not.
No, I was going to say, yeah, part of the image problem thing, but I forgot where we're going before that, but I just wanted to make the statement that one of the best memories probably in this room is probably Satan himself, because he can remember minute detail of things that we did in our past, and he can remember how you felt, and he can remember all these things, and he brings them to your remembrance. But we also have Holy Spirit who brings to remembrance the things that God has said. And we have also a God who has a terrible memory when it comes to the things that we have come and asked for forgiveness for. And I think it's amazing. The people that have the best memories of our faults are being directed by one person, and we know who that is.
Yeah.
And then we have the people that only see the good in us, because I think it's a perfect picture of, like, my mom. Shout out Becky. Like, she's a perfect picture of what the Holy Spirit does, because the Holy Spirit has this blind eye toward, yeah, you did those things. That's covered under the blood. You know who I see now is this person. So,
Yeah, and she changed my life by words of encouragement.
yeah.
That's a true story. She changed my life because of the things that came out of her mouth.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's a whole nother story as well. But
What was it about that? Like, was it just like the first time hearing someone encourage you in that, or like what was so different about her encouragement?
I hate to say, because it sounds cliche, but the first time that I ever met her, Becky, mom, I don't know how you want me to refer to her. Mom.
In law.
Yeah, we'll say mom-in-law. I was working at Herschel's, and she always tells it. She can tell the story better than I can, but she, her and Jessica and Rachel would go through for a tea, and she was like, "Hey, who's that cute boy? Hey, look at his hair. I had long hair, like flipping up, or whatever."
Yeah, he did.
Braces and all the stuff. But who's that cute boy? Blah blah blah. And Jessica, she says, "Well, that's just Kasey. Whatever." And she was like, I can't remember if she said, "That's who you're gonna marry," or I think that's what she said. I'm pretty sure she said, "That's who you're gonna date. That's who you're gonna marry. That's your person," essentially. Which is really weird. It's really bold. Not weird, but bold, because it's like she didn't know anything about me. If she knew who I was, there is no way that she would have said that at that, especially at that time. She would have never said that. Or maybe she would have. I don't know. Maybe
She never.
well, I mean, maybe she could see things in me that I couldn't see in myself. And I believe that she could, and that's why I believe that she changed my life.
Wow.
But yeah, I mean, it wasn't that moment, because that was not a conversation that I heard, right? But I was just kind of being myself. And even through all of my issues and troubles, I always just tried to be the nicest person that I could be.
Yeah.
Because I still knew at that time what it felt like to be the opposite. Like I always felt like everyone treated me the opposite. I felt like everyone was mean to me, looked down on me, and just didn't feel worthy, And
Wow.
yeah. So, and I met Jessica so okay, this ties in. Okay, so going to church to ET. Darren invited my family. My aunt and my grandparents went there as well. They invited us, but I don't know why specifically it was Darren, but my parents were like, hey, Darren invited us, let's go, which I'm glad that they did, because that was what changed my life. That invitation is what changed my life, because we went, and the first week we sat in the back, the whole deal, and just uncomfortable the whole time, right? Like, what are we doing here? Like, it's Sunday. I'm ready. I got to go to school tomorrow. I want to go home and do nothing, play video games. But at the same time, something felt different. Like I felt like there was a tugging in my heart at the same time, to where we went over after service and we were visiting with my aunt, uncle, grandparents. Both my grandparents were alive then. And we were visiting with them, and Darren walks over and, give hugs, whatever. I've never met him before, but I thought that he was really impressive because he was the leader of the worship. Mm-hmm. And I was very easily impressed then. But he was, that sounds really bad, because he was great. So I was impressed because it was like, hey, somebody that I know is of importance. Wow, yeah. And so, because that's that's a position of importance. And I knew him. He's a family member of mine, right? And so I thought that was really cool. And it was almost like a celebrity in a way. Kind of like a celebrity in a way. So whenever he was walking over, it was like, man, that was the guy that was up there, Yeah. And I remember he invited me to youth group that night. It was, I don't know what you would call it. It was Sunday night. Youth group was on Wednesdays, but it was Sunday night. And I was like, no way. Like, there's not a chance, not again, but somehow I did, man. I went and put on my best shirt, my jeans, my boots, my hat, and I went in just this, country talking bumpkin, just like I am now, nothing's changed. And I remember whenever I walked in, and Jason Harris, and I don't even know if Jason knows the story, but I walked into the youth building, and it was really cool because they had pool tables, and they had a vending machine, a Coke machine that you could go and get a Coke from. It was like, those things impressed me as a kid. It's like, those are the things that drew me in. And we were in Jason's office, and that's where we kind of did our little group meeting. I don't know what it's called again, but it was just like a little Sunday thing. And Jason gave us a verse of the week, and it was the John verse, I am the vine, you are the branch, whoever abides in me. Yeah. And so I still remember that. And I took that home, and I studied it all week. And I think that was the first thing that I'd ever studied in my life. I'm serious. Wow. And I remember, like, whenever I walked into that room, Jason. Yeah. He's got a great smile. It's like, it's just a really inviting smile. He's a really inviting person. And I remember I felt safe in that room. Whoa. Yeah. And I was like, But I felt safe. But I think it was the last episode, or maybe the episode before, you were talking about the human brain every, 7 times a second is scanning its environment to make sure you're not in danger. That's what I was doing. It's like, I feel safe. This guy feels safe.
But you're still checking.
But I'm still checking. Yeah. And there were, I think, 3 or 4 kids in there that night. And anyways, we just kind of talked and had a conversation. And I'm thankfully that they didn't call on me. It would have been like, oh, I don't know. But I think that he probably knew. I think Darren probably told him, like, hey, this kid's new. Like, don't call him out, Yeah. And anyways, and they gave us that verse of the week and said, hey, just if you get a chance, pray whenever you're praying this week. Yeah. Read this and think on it. And I was like, what's prayer? What's that? Yeah. And but then we prayed at the end, and I was like, okay, I can do that. I can close my eyes and talk to this guy, whoever he is. And yeah, that was a memory of me. So that was kind of the turning point for me. Wow. And to be honest with you, the reason why I went there was because I thought they were going to be girls. Yeah. And there was a girl, but she was already taken. And they're married today. Stevie and Elise Prater. I didn't go for Elise. I went for the girls, but she was there. And Stevie and her were dating, and great couple, man. Yeah. They're married and got, I think they have 3 kids now. And so, anyways, just great people. But that's why I went. I went for the girls, and then it was like, okay, I feel kind of safe. Yeah, I have a verse. He's kind of showed me an example of how to pray. I feel like I can do this. I'll come back next week and try it out again. And so I did. Yeah. And that was kind of the moment in my life where it was like the turning point. And then I went to, Jason invited us to youth group on Wednesday. Yeah. And I went to youth group, and again, I was going for the girls. But at the same time, I made a couple friends, but it wasn't my way. I've always been a really good chameleon. I've always been really good at trying to fit into my environment. Again, we know why, because we've talked about it. Yeah. But I started, it's funny because whenever you start to act like something over a period of time, you start believing it, right? Yeah. And, I'm starting to slowly transition. I'm starting to slowly change. And then before you know it, I'm going every week. I can't miss it. I know how to praise God. I know how to pray. Mm-hmm. I've made relationships. I've got fellowship. And it's like, and that's what I feel like God wants from us. He wants us to build companionship. Mm-hmm. And that's how we get to him. It doesn't matter how you get to him. Just get to him, right? And so just make sure that you treat people the right way. If you treat people the right way, I've got a friend I'm in a Bible study with right now. His name's Jonathan. Well, I shouldn't say friend. We meet on Zoom. I'm going to call him a friend. And in-law. Friend-in-law. And he said something really good the other day. And he said, always preach the gospel and speak when necessary.
Nice. Wow.
It's good, right?
That is really good.
And he doesn't know just how much that meant, in my life with how I was treated and things like that. So, but
I think, actually I know for a fact you're not the only kid that's grown up like this. And I think that there's a lot of people even now who are listening who feel like they're in this exact same spot as you were. And I want to ask, if you had the opportunity to speak to your younger self, knowing what you know now, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I used to. It wasn't until recently, as a matter of fact, this might be a surprise to both of you, but it wasn't until recently that I wasn't regretful of my past. I remember growing up thinking, and I'm answering, but it's kind of a long answer. I remember thinking whenever I was growing up, I wish I had different parents. Mm-hmm. And I told my parents that. And dude, you talk about if I heard Cooper say that, which he might say it one day.
No, you won't, Cooper.
he might say it. But dude, how heartbreaking. How much hurt do you have to have as a child? How much pent up hurt do you have to have towards the world to tell your parents that you don't like them and that you wish that you had different parents? And it's well, no wonder we didn't have a great relationship. I was just mad. Yeah. And a lot of it was because of my parents, and, but we've me and my mom and dad have a really, really good relationship today. Me and my mom used to not be able to be in the same room for more than 2 minutes because we're so much alike that just look at me the wrong way. Look at me. Just look at me. I'm begging you.
That's why I don't look at Crutcher sometimes.
We would, it was like,
I'm sorry.
We'd be like, are you going to say something to me? Because I'm ready. It's always fist up, And what a terrible way to have a relationship with your parents, But we've grown through that. Again, we've grown up together. And so that's been kind of a healing moment in my life. But I used to be really ashamed of how I grew up and who I was growing up, but I now know that the things that I went through was what God was using to shape me into who I am today. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really important because, you know, there's people in the world, like there's children, there's adults that are like, my situation is hopeless. And I've heard you say that. And it can be further from the truth, man, because I think that we need to speak a little life into you. We need to take the tension off of me in just a minute, and we need to speak some life into you because I got some things to say to you, Sam.
Whoa. He's calling you out, dude.
Here for it.
Yeah. But I don't know, man. That's a really hard question because if I could talk to myself whenever I was a kid, it wouldn't matter because I wouldn't have listened to me anyways.
What would you say to someone who's not you then?
That's a tough question too, because this is where it's important to preach the gospel and speak when necessary, because my situation is going to involve community.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we have to be better as adults to kids.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
And, you know, the whole thing of like, you know, I've heard it growing up, like kids are to be seen and not heard. Yep. And it's like, well, there's a lot of kids that are struggling right now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of kids that don't want to be on this earth, you know, and it's because like they can't be heard.
Yeah.
And so my answer would involve community of like, hey, it's our job, it's our responsibility as the adults to show the gospel to these kids, you know, and it can't be once. It can't be like there's going to be situations where you're going to pass a child, right? You're like at the Hot Pepper Festival, for example, you're going to pass a kid and you're never going to see that kid again, but you can only control what you can do, like in your day to day, like kids at church, for example. How about the new family that comes to church with kids? Yep. You don't know what their situation's like.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people look at kid, you know, people, the way that they're dressed, and it's like, I don't want to associate with that person. You know, and it's like that person could be here on their last ditch effort before they're going to kill themselves.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that kid probably doesn't know how they feel, but there's a reason why that kid's acting out.
Yeah.
You know, and we just look at them and we're like, that's a problem child.
Yep.
Mm.
It's like, man, if you could just live in their shoes for one day, you would understand that they're more than a problem child. Yep. And I think, so my answer is community. It's hard to really put an answer on that.
That's good.
But yeah, I mean, we just have to show that love to people, you know, spread love. So,
No, I think it's important for us to see the wound before you see and judge the actions. And it's like, however kids are acting out, however adults are acting out sometimes, it's like there's a wound there, and try to like see that versus just jumping straight to judgment and, oh yeah, like really put your thumb down on this kid because they're going to be an issue or whatever. It's like, no, let's like talk to them.
yeah.
Let's find out what's going on, because there's something going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tough too, because I mean, there are kids that need discipline, you know, but yeah, I mean, exactly. Every situation is different, but for the most part, kids just want to be heard. They just want to be played with. They just want to be accepted. And that's it. You know, it's like, I really struggle because with Cooper, you know, I don't apologize for anything that I do as a parent, but you know, some people could look at me and think, well, he's too affirmative of his child. It's like, well, I don't care. You know, I want to let my boy know that he's a great kid. He's smart. He's funny. He's good to be around, you know? But at the same time, Cooper can accept that, but Cooper wants to play with me. And it's like, you can do both. you can be both. You can be both. So,
Well,
yeah. But
I feel like Daniel has. You've been sitting on.
Tough
You've been
topic.
sitting on something.
no, I've been absorbing it in.
What have you been absorbing? What's hit you?
No, like you said, if you could go back and say one thing, I think the one that I would have tackled talking to your younger self, and I think you nailed it on the head. Like there's so many kids that are just ready to leave this world, and it's so sad. But in your situation and in a lot of situations, I would speak hope. And I feel like we as men and women of the kingdom of light, we are like ambassadors to go and bring hope in whatever situation we're in.
yeah,
It's like we should be the most hope-filled people on the face of the planet. And it's because we have something to offer people, and it's not a counterfeit, it's not a fake, it's something of substance. And to those little kids and to your younger self, I'd be like, listen, it looks rough right now. You don't feel accepted. You don't feel, all these things. But let me tell you, there's going to come a day where you're going to be this awesome man. It's going to be sitting on a couch doing a podcast, encouraging other people, raising a godly family, leaving a legacy, doing all these things. Because I look at it now, and it's almost like a badge that you have, that you came from the past that you did, and now you're literally the example of saying this is a godly man. This is a man of honor and integrity. So, I mean, I'm never going to say that, because you're still an idiot. You're my brother. But you really are, joking aside, one of the most integrous, honorable men that I know, with a past that only God took and changed around, and here you are today.
Yeah.
So,
And I would add to this, like, hearing your story, hearing what you came up through, it does not change the way I see you. It does not change the way I think about you. In fact, it gives context to you.
yeah.
That it's like, I see now your journey.
yeah,
Because I think, like, we can have a fear of people hearing our past and it affecting them, but it's like under the expectation that you're going to hear this and think that's who I am. And it's like, no, I saw this as your journey into who you are.
yeah,
Yeah.
And you're still becoming you. Like, we're all still becoming. That's the
Yeah.
thing. Like, a lot of things that you just said about, oh, well, kids need this. I need that. Like, I'm an
Yeah.
adult and I need that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it's like we have a culture that has told us, like, don't talk about your flaws. Don't talk about your issues. Keep it to yourself and project perfection.
Ooh.
And I think, and you kind of hit on this a little bit when you were like, as a kid, you thought all adults had their life together.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, I think that when you don't bring in the issues and things that you're struggling with, if you're raising a kid, and I don't have kids, so take it with a grain of salt, but like bringing them into overcoming something versus pretending it's not happening in
Yeah.
the season gives more nutrients to that kid and prepares him for life more than if you're like rescuing him from knowing, like, we're having financial issues and like
Yeah.
whatever like that. It's like, no, look how we overcome this now
Yeah.
versus like, oh, we can't get that right now. Well, just because I said so. Like,
Yeah.
and then the kids just wondering, like, well, did I did something wrong? Like, why? What did I do? Like, because all kids internalize everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, you
Bringing them into the solution.
bringing them into the solution
Yeah.
and showing them the journey through the hard.
Yeah.
And it's like, because as a parent, I understand like wanting to save them
Yeah.
and not wanting them to think about this and not
Yeah.
wanting them to weigh on them or have like, but we have no idea what strength that's going to build
Yeah.
in the long run. Like,
That's-
if they're like, I can see my dad, and I remember when he was struggling,
Yes.
and I remember when it was hard, and then I saw God come in where we couldn't do anything in that situation.
100%.
And now, like, I know my God is provider. I know my God is savior.
Yeah.
And it's like we're depriving them of it.
That's one of the most interesting things right now inside of my life with Dad. I don't know if he'll ever watch this episode. Probably not, but because he doesn't watch podcasts. But it's an interesting dynamic in the kingdom. Is right now I'm stewarding my children, who are my children, but I'm also their brother in Christ. It's just a weird dynamic to think that I am Micaiah, William, and AJ's brother in the kingdom. And it's like, and the only thing that separates us is my age difference. Because when they're my age one day, like, they're going to have the same, you see what I'm going with that. And I'm thinking, like, bringing them into that is one of the most important things we can do right now as parents, is being like, some things, I understand using wisdom, and some things they can't handle at their capacity, but bringing my oldest in and being like, listen, like the finance thing, be like, we're going to be okay, and I'm going to show you security and all this, but this is a thing that we're facing right now, struggles and stuff like that. Hey, I know you're going through that. Let me tell you a story of when I went through something similar, and bringing them into that conversation, as opposed to, you need to pray more. And
Right.
you need to figure out a solution.
Anyway. Well, have you seen the illustration of the person with his arm out? It's going all around social media, but and it has for years. But the guy with his arm out, the guy like leaning over the deck, just pray about it. It's like, hey, grab the guy's arm and pull him out of the water. You can do both.
Yeah.
You can be both.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I used to be really ashamed of who I was, but I think fatherhood changed that.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the moment, because God showed me that, hey, there are things that Cooper and Walker aren't going to have to go through.
Yeah.
Because you can teach them, like, hey, you don't have to do this. And I know how you feel. And so just being able to be that encourager to them, and show them that life is more about your, less about your failures and more about, like, who God says that we are.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's funny because I remember the first time that I really read about Peter, and anyways, I really related to him, because it was like, he walked with Jesus in his ministry. He knew who Jesus was, and he still cut the guy's ear off. And Jesus still told him to put it away, and healed the guy's ear, and went and, was crucified on the cross for our sins. And it's like, but I'm Peter in that moment, because it's like, hey, I'm going to fight you, and I'm not going to let you know who I am. And it's a whole crazy journey.
Well, and on that, like, because this is Mosaic, and we take shards and we rotate and we look at all perspectives. Peter's protecting.
Yeah.
That's at the heart. He just wants to be a protector.
Right? Yeah.
Like, that's his friend. That's his buddy. Like, it came out of a very good intention.
Right.
And so that side of you, like, there's elements to your past that just shine through to me. Like, wow, you just want people to be included. You just want to put value on someone who feels unvalued.
Yeah.
And like that's what I see before any other, like, whatever flaw you want to throw at it. But it's the kindness. Like, that's why kindness means so much to you. That's why inclusion means so much to you. And it's like, you're the kid that didn't have that.
Yeah.
And how much different would it be if every single one of your teachers was like, just read at your own pace.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's appropriate. It's okay.
Nice.
It would be nice. It would be nice.
It would be nice.
Change the school system.
You hear that? Calling out the school system. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, it's tricky, because I was young. I was behind everyone. I was always smaller than everyone, because, again, 1 year, it makes a big difference. And so intellectually and physically. And so, anyways, It's pretty incredible.
You got anything, Danny?
I don't have anything.
Hey, can I say this real quick?
You can say anything you want.
Thank
Okay.
you, everybody.
I need to say this because I don't want, again, I said this towards the beginning, but I don't want to paint my parents in a bad light. Right. We grew up together. There's my dad wasn't always there, not because he had to be gone for work. And so me and my mom grew up together. Mm-hmm. I saw my dad maybe one day a week, for about 4 hours for lunch, and it was like he was sleeping because he was working all the time, man. He was always busy. And so I don't hold that against him, and he knows that. I've told him that. And also my mom, I've told her, like, hey, I don't hold anything against you. And so I don't want to paint them in a bad light, is what and I've been really lucky. I don't think that it's any coincidence that I was brought into this family because, not because everyone but Daniel.
I was ready for it. I was waiting.
No, but seriously, I think about, Jessica has believed in me more than anybody ever. But if it weren't for your mom and your dad doing what they did for me with school and giving me a place to live through that, I would have never done it. And my life would be completely different than what it is now. Your life would be completely different than it is now because you would have never gotten into insurance. You'd be at Taco Bell.
I would be at Taco Bell.
And so it's really funny. Like it's like, the way that God can change you however 30 years ago. And it's like, okay, he's got his plans. There's free will, but we go through things.
Yeah.
Issues.
Lots of them.
So anyways,
I want to take this time to present it to you. Like, if there's anything that you've been chewing on, anything that you want to bring up, or anything that you want to talk about, we can have space for that.
Not really.
Sweet. All right. Well, I think this has been extremely helpful for a lot of people, and I think that your story is going to touch a lot of people and bring encouragement to people who just, like, right now they need to hear this. And it's like, if anything, just knowing that you're not alone in your season, that means so much.
Yes.
And that's the space that we want to provide here at Mosaic. Like, we want to invite you guys in, hang out with us, chat with us in the live chats during these episodes. But, like, you'll notice me and Daniel are in there. Like, we want to be there with you guys to show that we're not going through anything alone. Yeah. We're not going through any season alone. We're not going through any struggle alone. And you can talk about it, you can bring it up, and you can try to find that goodness that's hiding behind all the lies that tell you that this season's wasted, or that this was something that should never be talked about, or just hide it away.
Yeah.
Because that's the last thing we need to do. So thank you guys for hanging out. Daniel, you have anything?
No, that's really good, man.
Jesus. Turn to Jesus.
Yep.
Yeah. Turn to Jesus.
Now.
All right, guys. I'll see you in the next episode.